The cabinet secretary in charge of trade in Kenya, Bwana Moses Kuria, is in the news. And he is in the news doing what he does best, bullying. And this time, Kuria's wrath is upon the media. To be specific, the Nation Media Group. You see, the Nation Media Group, this is very interesting, in recent times has completely changed its corporate strategy, kabisa. And in this new strategy, it is very clear that what somebody is trying to do is to recover the lost glory, the reputation of years gone by of the nation for breaking stories, for giving you stories that you cannot get anywhere else. Older Kenyans will of course know exactly what I'm talking about, but our younger guys will have no idea. But not to worry, I will come back to that in great detail so that we're all on the same page shortly. Now, I just need to give you a heads up. Weekly Intelligence Briefings number 110 will be released in a few hours. And the topic is a man called Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. You see, some super fascinating things have been happening behind the scenes. Yeah, of course, highly sensitive stuff. I'm sure most of you understand. Yeah, that I've chosen to share with you in these very hot weekly intelligence briefings. Because many of us have thought that Museveni will go the way of John Pombe Magufuli, former president of Tanzania. Yeah. So make sure you don't miss that WAB. Okay? It will be out in a few hours. In case you're not yet a subscriber, I would highly recommend that you take advantage of our latest offers, because there are 2 or 3 other very, very big stories I've been working on for weeks that I'm going to break shortly in the WABs. Okay, you can see details on your screens right now. Yeah, I'll repeat them towards the end of this video, so don't worry too much, but make sure you act now. Right, you know, in this life you can do something that makes things very obvious. Yeah, for instance, you can get involved in something shady, and then your actions after the fact, yeah, paint your guilt for all to see. Mchana. The reason why CS Kuria is very upset at the Nation Media Group is because they have recently broken a story of a mega scandal within the William Samoei Ruto administration, yeah, of edible oils, where a few connected people, connected to State House of course, and William Samoei Ruto, were given free rein, duty free, to import edible oils. Yeah, and of course the excuse seemed noble, yeah, to reduce the price of this product, which is really straining the pockets of Kenyans. Because we all need this oil to cook our food. And Bwana Kuria has used unprintable language in referring to the media. Wale malaya wa Aga Khan, hapo Nation Media Group, that's what he said. And he has warned anybody in government that if he sees any media advertisement anywhere in any outlet of the Nation Media Group, those people responsible for such an ad should consider themselves fired, because they'll go home for sure. Now, there's something about the UD administration I'm still to understand. I've not yet understood. Because in the old days in journalism, when you produce a story, even in recent times, and somebody thinks that story is not accurate, then they're going to poke holes at it. Point to fact number 1 is wrong, the real position is this. Fact number 2 is wrong, the real position is this. But what the UDA government tends to do is to talk about other things linked to that story. Yeah, in other words, divert attention and fire a lot of barbs at the messenger. without addressing the content, the message, what they produced. And true to form, this is exactly what has happened with this brilliant nation expose. They tell us it took them over 7 months to research and put together their facts to give us this story. Kudos, nation. I wish you the best as you seek to recover your lost glory. A very uphill task, but mine is to encourage, not to discourage. The bottom line in this edible oil scandal is that a few people, a few Kenyans, walked away with serious money in their pockets. In other words, if these few Kenyans, assuming that they had zero or negative in their bank account, after this transaction was complete, they were in a different league. Mdaiga Golf Club League. They earned hundreds of millions for sure, each of them. And folks, there is a pattern developing here, because it was the same story with maize. Remember, a handful of Kenyans imported maize into the country duty-free. And the whole idea was to reduce the prices of valuable unga ya ugali for Kenyans. And of course that didn't happen. Just like in the edible oil story, the prices did not come down, have never come down. Now there's a critical clue here I want us to look at. In both these instances, maize and the edible oil, President William Samoei Ruto told us something to the effect that the prices of this commodity are coming down. Kuanzia next week, kuanzia next week, tutaona bei zimeteremka. We were wondering yesterday in our Telegram forum whether we should give him a new name. President kuanzia next week. Okay? But the truth here is that the president knew what had happened, and he knew that as a result of those duty-free importations, it would have an impact on prices in the market, and the prices would start coming down. He knew that for sure. And indeed, even if it was you, you'd know that as a result of those people importing this commodity duty-free, obviously what you expect is for the prices to come down. Now the question is, what went wrong in both instances? Well, it can be summarized in one short English word: greed. Ulafi. Greed to make even more money. Greed that this money we're making is a lot, but it is not enough. We need to make more. And in my opinion, it is also evidence that those who are running government in Kenya today are naive, or they don't understand the Kenyan market properly. Because obviously, you're entering a new industry which already has existing players, some of them very powerful in the market. Like in the case of unga, obviously the other millers cried foul, and they fought back. And today I can reveal how they fought back. Because even if you're not powerful, you can use your brains. What the millers did was to leak information to the opposition, Raila Odinga and company, that this maize which was imported very cheaply, duty-free, was substandard maize, very low quality, which makes sense because we're talking about brokers here. We're talking about people wanting to make money last year, wanting to become trillionaires last year. And they also leaked information to the opposition that this maize which had been imported was GMO. And the big problem there is that at least you should tell the people. You should clearly label in your product that it is GMO, so that the people have a choice. Now, the Kenyan public are smarter than anybody gives them credit for. I recently walked into a supermarket in Kenya. Yeah, actually I walked into several to find out and see for myself. And it is very interesting that brands like Hostess, which is normally high-end, were moving like hotcakes. And this other brand new brand, produced by these people who imported the maize cheaply, and which in fact is the cheapest brand, was struggling to move. Now, of course, today the situation has changed slightly. Times have become very hard, and therefore some Kenyans, many Kenyans, don't have a choice. They just have to buy the cheaper unga. But you can see, in this scandal of maize, vitu kwa ground zilikuwa different. Vitu kwa ground ended up being very different. And the objectives of those behind it were not met, because to date, unga prices have not come down. And there's no sign of them ever coming down anytime soon. Edible oils the same. Yeah, they're not coming down anytime soon. But what has happened is that some Kenyans have made a fortune. And KRA has also lost a fortune. Yeah, because these people didn't pay any taxes. And so the beneficiaries were William Samoei Ruto cronies. That's really what it is. But of course, the difference between the unga scandal and the edible oil scandal is that the edible oil scandal is an expose by our media, the Nation Media Group. And so one has to ask, will the Nation Media Group survive this attack by the government? And even more important, will the Nation Media Group sustain its new approach, where they want to be the old nation, respected by the public, trusted by the public, rewarded by buying newspapers, tuning into their TV stations, etc., etc., which translates into huge profits that don't have to rely on government advertisers or advertisers who are sympathetic to the regime. Now, for the sake of our younger viewers, who are the vast majority, there was a time in Kenya when the Nation newspaper had a reputation for breaking stories. Indeed, I remember in those days, every Sunday, it was a must, whether you had the money or not, whether you were broke or not. It was mandatory that you purchase a copy of the Sunday Nation and spend a lazy Sunday afternoon reading it from cover to cover. Now, those of us who are older Kenyans have tried to do the same in recent times, and it doesn't work out well. You flip through 2 or 3 stories, and then you just throw the paper away. Nation definitely lost touch with its public. And the story of how this happened is super fascinating, and an important lesson for anybody who is in business. Okay, although the story itself is very exciting. So let's go for it. Now, in the early 90s, the Nation Group was making super profits. And there was a lot of urgency to sustain these profits going forward. But what was happening in Kenya in the early 90s? There was the fight for the second liberation, the fight for multi-party politics. And the Aga Khan's newspaper kept on embarrassing the Moi regime, and of course delighting the public, who were buying copies of the Nation like it was going out of fashion, like hotcakes, and the profits were pouring in, mostly in cash. Because you don't buy a newspaper with a check, you pay cash for it. Now, those who are in finance know the advantage a business has when they're collecting money in cash, as opposed to that one ambao wanangoja machek or checks as payment. And so these corporate boys decided that it was time for the Nation to shift focus away from circulation, selling newspapers. The reasoning was that they already had a very strong brand, so maintaining it amongst the people buying the newspaper would not be difficult. And the decision was made to make a shift to going for advertising revenue. Those who were around at the time will remember that the group purchased printing machines capable of printing full color. Before then, it was just mostly black and white. And even the color production was very poor. Yeah, so they made the huge investment of going for full color printing machines. Yeah, so that virtually every photograph in the newspaper would be in color. And of course here the main target was the advertiser, yeah, who obviously prefers full color to advertise their products and services. Now it is important that we realize the people who are behind this massive growth of the nation and its popularity, the journalists behind it, were ordinary folks, watu wa mtaa, people with very limited education, formal education. Many of them former teachers. I believe the best way of illustrating this is the story of a legendary Kenyan journalist called George Mbugus, the late George Mbugus. Now George Mbugus started at the Nation Media Group, not in the newsroom. He started as a tea boy, mtu wa kupika chai, and a messenger. I kid you not. And he got very interested in journalism. So as he was making the tea, he started contributing stories to the Kiswahili paper of the Nation Media Group, Taifa Leo. And he climbed through the ranks and became the editor of Taifa Leo, and did such a brilliant job, especially with the circulation of the newspaper, the kind of stories he carried, that the English edition of the newspaper developed some interest in him. Yeah, their reasoning was it used the same instincts, the same tactics to grow the circulation of the English version of the newspaper. And they were right. Many of the circulation records George Mbugus broke at the helm of the Nation newspaper will never be broken to the end of time, in my opinion. A man with very limited formal education, yeah, but a natural journalist. And he proved this when he left the Nation Media Group, or rather he was asked to leave. And he built up a newspaper called The People Weekly to very high circulation figures, confirming that what he did at the Taifa Leo Nation were not a fluke. Yeah, this man was gifted. And because of this corporate decision of tuache kusumbuana na serikali, yeah, the government calling every time about this story or that story, yeah, go easy on the news stories and focus on advertising revenue. This decision is best illustrated by what happened one day in 1991. George Mbugus was asked to leave, to retire from the Nation. Looking back, that was not the end of George Mbugus' career at the Nation. No. It was the end of an entire era in Kenyan journalism. Because there were many other decisions, critical decisions that followed Mbugus' exit. For example, it was decided that the Nation newspaper, quickly followed by the other media houses, would no longer employ journalists who were not university graduates. Now on paper that looks like it makes sense. Yeah, but the big question is, are these graduates gifted as journalists? Do they have a nose for news? Can they develop one? And then to make matters worse, where do these graduate journalists live? Or where do they want to live? In Lavington, Kileleshwa, Muthaiga, Kilimani, as opposed to the old journalists, many of whom lived somewhere along Jogoo Road, Eastlands, Buruburu, such places, where the news is, and where they can get a feel of what the ordinary Kenyan is going through, and more importantly, what the ordinary Kenyan is most interested in. And that is how our newspapers suddenly got very boring. Yeah, and even our media news got extremely boring compared to what we were treated to in the past. Yeah. My point here is that even as the nation group makes a very spirited effort to go back to the nation of old, the media house Kenya used to know, there are many things that will need to be undone. Indeed, some of them have already been undone. Like I'm informed, the rule about university graduates has been scrapped. But that does not mean that getting gifted, dedicated journalists is going to be automatic. No, of course not. But even after saying all that, ours is to encourage them to go for it. Because a country's media is a very important pillar in the checks and balances of a country. Very critical. And if we want a better Kenya, we really have no option but for a media which lost its way some time back in the hunt for quick profits. We have no option but for that media to find the right road again. Now, before I go, a quick reminder of my latest weekly intelligence briefings. You can see details on your screens right now. The topic is Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. Go for it. Take advantage of our latest offer. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.